experiences I had at FAMU.
What used to motivate me to stay up at late at night and throughout the night is for Dr. Humphries and for you to say that every time FAMU asked for something, it got better for Black people, not only in Florida but throughout the country. And so, talk a little bit more about the scholarship and fellowship opportunities and the hiring that went on every time FAMU asked for something and they told us no and gave us something different.
Well, we started trying to get a law school back in 1985, and we didn't get one until the year 2000. So in between, the state came up with all kinds of plans to make a FAMU law school less necessary. Came up with the Virgil Hawkins fellowship, which allowed Black students to have a very nice financial aid package and go to law school at the predominantly white institutions at the time. One or two of them even hired Black deans, but I don't think are there other Black deans in the state now?
Yes.
Which state?
No.
Okay. Well, we always used to say that those Black deans at Miami and wherever else they have them old should be making a contribution to FAMU every year. We have to get their job. But yeah, definitely. When FAMU raised sand, things got better, even if they didn't get better directly for FAMU. And what's your name?
Maritza Reyes.
Oh, okay.
But you can pronounce it Maritza Reyes.
Okay.
So, I'm familiar with the story because I was a law student. I'm from Miami, and so I was a law student during the last push. I graduated in 2000. And I remember that, the push for FIU and FAMU at the same time. I remember the faxes. I remember that the politicians, the Cuban politicians, the Hispanic politicians in Miami, it was all over the radios that we had to call, that we had to, send faxes to the legislature to get the bill passed. And at the law school level, the minority bars were reaching out to the law students in the law schools, the minority law students. So it was very exciting to see the process from that side as a law student. Because the argument also was that they had the MPLE, the Minority Professional Legal Education Scholarships at the time. And I know I had a lot of classmates who had gone to law schools, white schools under those. But what excited me, and when I hear Dr. Humphries' story, because I had part of it from that side, was the coalition of the Hispanics and the African Americans to get it done for both schools. So that part was exciting for me, and I think that doesn't get played enough in terms of, these communities in Florida, what they can do when they work together. Even if it was Republicans and Democrats at the time. And when you mentioned the voting rights case, for example, in the oral argument yesterday, Justice Sotomayor was amazing in terms of voicing the perspective of why you still need Section 5 for minorities. So as a Latina, I was so proud of that, because when Dr. Humphries was saying that he was going to, for example, some of the Black legislators, and they were not going to put forward FAMU College of Law, I'm thinking, how is Clarence Thomas going to vote on this case? But at least feeling like, I think I know how Sonia Sotomayor is going to vote on this case. And I have a question for something that you mentioned about the Florida Board of Governor who told you that he was going to vote for it and then at the last minute changed it and you called him a liar. How did you find out that they didn't vote for you? It's a public vote?
It was a public vote.
Aren't you glad that it's a public vote?
Yes. And I was also sitting in the president's office when he called. So I heard everything he said. So it wasn't as if this was hearsay or anything. I actually heard him ask the president to terminate him. But the president's answer was so funny, I was really laughing by the time that conversation was over. But I do believe that there are opportunities for the Black community and the Hispanic community to work together. When those opportunities to present themselves, I think we ought to take advantage of them, because because that's how we can make progress. And if we fight each other rather than fight the real enemy, well, I don't want to say, well, yeah, enemy.
The status quo.
Yeah, I mean, we don't make the progress we ought to make. So, in another life, I'm president of the Leon County Democratic Black Caucus, and we work with the Hispanic caucus in North Florida. Work closely with them.
We worked together in the last election. In the
And we
presidential
worked well
election.
in the last election. In fact, that's part of it.
Especially here in Florida.
Yeah. So,
To the surprise of some.
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, really it did, but it shows that people are intelligent and they can understand what the real issues are, and that they aren't buying off on the demagoguery that has allowed people to pit one group against another group in the past, and as our communities become more and more sophisticated, I think we'll do more and more things together, and that can be a very positive thing. I mean, this country is going to be majority minority before you know it, and this state before the country. So I think what we did when we got our law school was a move in the right direction, and there's some things happening right now that are a move in the right direction.
Well, I would love to have you come and speak to the Hispanic American Law Students Association. I'm the faculty sponsor, and if they could hear this part of the story, even though I've shared it with them, hearing it from the actual participants at that level would be great. So you have an open invitation.
Well, thank you. And if I get to it, President Humphries good because he was right there too.
Yeah, Bishop,
Tony, and then the next
I
one.
want to just make 2 points. The first is you were modest when you talked about the law school. And I say that because we were at a Black Alumni Reunion in 2011, and you and Derek Bach had a kind of almost a statement and statement. But Derek Bach told us that when they admitted, they I guess decided to admit, well, they were told by the dean they were going to admit black folks in 1960, which helped a lot of us because a lot of us didn't think that was a majority vote when we got there in terms of the faculty members, and you know what I'm talking about, right? But they didn't know what to do with us. Derek Bach said, didn't he? He said that when they got us, they didn't know what to do with us. And you, as the president of BALSA, and Dickie White, as the vice president, were instrumental in really making sure that, and I'm on camera so I can't say anything about feet to the fire, but making certain that the law school responded, and I mean it was a constant effort. That's the first point I wanted to make. But the other point that I think is relevant to keeping your eye on the ball is, in all honesty, we have to admit that wasn't an easy task for you and Dickie in the BALSA organization itself, if you may recall.
Yeah.
That
We had our disagreements.
almost a fist fight. I mean,
Well, we had some of those too.
I know you. I wasn't going to admit that, but the fact is, there were a number, and I think that's relevant to point out here. There were differences between folks from some of the northern schools and HBCUs. There were differences between people who had different majors. But at the end of the day, right, there was a consensus hammered out that enabled, as hard as some of those, I think about how many of us, like 30 of us or 40 or 50 of us, all having egos that you can't imagine, okay? All thinking we knew what to do. And working to get those individuals to a place where there was a structure like you described, and you understated, I think was a tremendous effort. But more importantly, it's an example of how people who are at loggerheads, right? You and I both know some of those meetings were very interesting. But at the end of the day, there was progress and we moved forward. And Bob acknowledged that when he talked about what we brought to the table at Harvard Law School.
Well, I think you make a good point, because even though we had the gangbangers from LA and the country boys from Alabama trying to arrive at policy for our Boston group. And we finally were able to do it. I mean, we came to Harvard and they had no black law professors at Harvard when we got there. By the time Tony left, they probably had 3 or 4. Now, I didn't benefit from that. I was preparing the table for those that followed behind me, but they hired some excellent black faculty members, and it was because we told them to. In fact, we helped them pick them out. I mean, they let us. I can remember Bob Bell flying out to California to interview Derek Bell. So even though there were differences, we finally were still able to function. And I'll never forget, at one meeting, it got so contentious that I asked Dr. Passant, who was on the Harvard medical faculty, I asked Dr. Passant, who was a renowned psychiatrist, to just come to one of our meetings, sit in the back, don't say anything, just watch us in action. So at the end of the meeting, I said, well, we've had as a guest here Dr. Alvin Passant, and I think his first name's Alvin, Dr. Alvin Passant, and I asked him to observe our meeting and just make some suggestions on how we could be a more collegial group, okay? And he said, Bishop, I've done what you asked me to do, and here's my observation. You have brought these brilliant black students have been brought together at a law school that's very negative. It doesn't give them a chance to express their concerns, their feelings as to what the curriculum should look like, their feelings as to what the menu in the law school cafeteria should look like, their feelings as to what the makeup of the construction crews that are working on this law school campus should look like. Your black law students have none of those opportunities, and the only time they get a chance to be heard is when they come to your meeting. And by God, when they get to your meeting, they are going to be heard, whether they're in or out of order. It doesn't matter. So once we had that insight, then we began to put all that energy to work. Instead of me trying to do everything, instead of committed, somebody may come to me and say, well, Phil Lee came to me and said, well, Bishop, they don't have any black people working on construction jobs at Harvard Law School. I've got union contacts. If you give me the imprimatur of the approval of the Black Law Students Association and let people know that we're operating under the authority vested in that group and with the power behind that group, then I'll do it. You won't have to do anything. And I said, good, because I'm trying to write a 30-year paper. I got to get the heck out of here. But Phil took that on. Phil and Al Christian, and they made progress. They met with Bach, and they got Bach to agree to make sure that contractors that worked on the Harvard Law School campus brought integrated crews. And integrated meant that there had to be some people from the African American community working on those construction jobs.